In May 2024, a small town in Japan took one of the most famous mountains on Earth and hid it behind a curtain. Not a landslide, not construction, a black screen roughly 8 feet tall and 65 feet wide, put up on purpose by the town itself. On the other side of that screen was a view millions of people had fallen in love with: Mount Fuji, floating perfectly above the roof of a convenience store. I'm Yoppy, I'm Japanese, and I know the urge to get the perfect shot. I feel it the moment I picture bringing my own family to a view like that, the wanting itself. That part I understand. So this is not a story about bad people. It's a story about what happens when a place is loved by more people than it can survive. Keep that curtain in mind, the black one, built to make people leave. Because by the end of this story, a curtain will stand at that corner again, and it will not be the same curtain. Mount Fuji was never just a mountain to us. For most of its history, Fuji was not a destination. It was an active volcano, a god you worshipped from a distance, because getting close could kill you. When UNESCO added it to the World Heritage List in 2013, it wasn't listed as a natural site. It was listed as a cultural one. Fujisan, sacred place and source of artistic inspiration. The world didn't certify a mountain, it certified a relationship. But this story doesn't happen on the mountain. It happens at the bottom, in front of a convenience store. The town of Fujikawaguchiko sits at the foot of Fuji, on the shore of a lake. Across from its small train station, there is a Lawson, one of Japan's most ordinary convenience store chains. Around 2022, a photo taken from that spot started spreading on Instagram. The framing was almost a joke. The most sacred mountain in Japan, rising directly out of the roof of a convenience store. The internet gave it a name, the Mount Fuji Lawson. One visitor from Hong Kong told a reporter how he found it. Instagram, Facebook, and a friend's recommendation. That's the whole machine. A photo becomes a pin on a map. A pin becomes a pilgrimage. And when Japan reopened its borders after the pandemic, in late 2022, the pilgrims came. One local resident, a man in his 60s, told reporters that visitors crossed the road without paying any attention to the cars, and that trash and cigarette butts were left everywhere. A woman in her 70s put it in a way that stayed with me. She said she felt for them. People had come all this way, and they wanted to see the view. But the traffic here is heavy, she said, and everyone worries about an accident. She didn't say, they are ruining our town. She said, I feel for them, and I'm afraid. And in the spring of 2024, the town made its decision. Mayor Hideyuki Watanabe didn't pretend it was a good option. It was a bitter decision, he said, but we needed measures to protect the safety of tourists and residents and the privacy of residents. And then, more bluntly, it was a situation where an accident could happen. We had no choice but to do it. On May 21st, 2024, the black screen went up. The Mount Fuji Lawson was gone. Within a week or two, Time magazine and CBS were reporting on a piece of fabric in front of a convenience store. Inside Japan, the curtain itself split opinion. Some stood with the town. Others asked the obvious question, what does a piece of fabric actually solve? One post from those days stuck with me. It said, more or less, it seems the TV crews are becoming a nuisance of their own now. One person's wry observation. But by then, news crews from around the world had stood at that corner too, pointing cameras at the tourists, pointing cameras at the mountain. The frenzy had become its own attraction. Within weeks, someone had poked small holes in the black screen, each one just big enough for a smartphone lens. Not damage, not an accident, peepholes made on purpose so that one more person could still get their shot. And here I have to be honest with you, I've never stood at that corner myself. Crowded photo spots are exactly the kind of place I stay away from. I remember when I first heard about those holes, and I won't pretend I was torn. I was appalled. Wanting the photo? That I understand. Poking a hole through a town's decision to get it? That I don't. And in a way, those holes explain the curtain better than any press conference could. The view wasn't hidden because people wanted a picture. It was hidden because too many people had stopped caring what that picture cost the people who lived there. Then, on August 15th, 2024, the screen came down. If this were a simple story, I'd tell you the town had won, that manners improved and the wall was no longer needed. That's not what happened. The screen came down because a typhoon was coming. A giant sheet of fabric next to a road is a hazard in a storm. And then, nothing. The crowds had calmed and the screen stayed down. Autumn, winter, spring. For almost a year, visitors and the town shared the view again, with no wall between them. Maybe that could have been the ending. It isn't. In August 2025, the screen returned. But wait, look closer. It was not the same screen. The 2024 screen stood 8 feet tall. Its job was to make the photo impossible, to erase the view. The 2025 screen is about 4.5 feet tall. You can see Mount Fuji over it. You can raise your phone and take the photo. Its job is different, to stop people from stepping into the road at a dangerous spot. The town even chose the height so that the side mirrors of large tour buses wouldn't clip it. A town official said cases of bad manners were decreasing, but that they would keep taking measures. 2024 said, "We cannot live with this, so we will erase it." 2025 says, "We can live with this if we manage it." To me, that looks like something rare. A town quietly deciding its first answer was too blunt and trying a more precise one. Not a defeat, not a victory either, an adjustment. And the mountain itself was going through the same transformation. In just 2 years, climbing Mount Fuji went from free to a mandatory fee on every route. 4,000 yen, about $25. The most popular trail also got a daily cap of 4,000 climbers. And on the Shizuoka side's 3 trails, you must now complete an online course on safety and manners before you're allowed up. And in the summer of 2025, about 143,000 people climbed from the Yamanashi side, and the fees brought in roughly $3.7 million. The mountain had rules now. The corner had a curtain you could photograph over. Coexistence managed. And then, 6 months later, the city next door gave the opposite answer. Fujiyoshida is a neighboring city, a separate municipality from Fujikawa-Guchiko, at the foot of the same mountain. Roughly 46,000 people live there. It has its own world-famous frame, Arakura Yamasengen Park, a hillside where a 5-story pagoda, cherry blossoms, and Mount Fuji line up in a single photograph. Every spring, the city held a cherry blossom festival there. About 200,000 visitors a year. On peak days, more than 10,000 in a single day. In a city of 46,000, that is a wave the streets were never designed to hold. The festival was not some ancient tradition trampled by the modern world. The city started it about 10 years ago, on purpose, to raise the region's profile and bring people in. It worked. It worked beyond anyone's dreams. And on February 3, 2026, at 11 a.m., the city announced it was canceling its own festival. The official reason was over-tourism, and the city's press release spells out exactly what that means. Chronic traffic jams, strangers walking into private homes uninvited to use the toilet, trespassing into yards, cigarette butts tossed on the ground, visitors relieving themselves in residents' gardens. And when residents dared to say something, some visitors snapped back at them. The school routes, the roads children walk every morning, had become dangerous. The announcement even quotes the city's own citizens. While citizens are being forced to bear such an enormous burden, why does the government keep holding this as an official event? Keep the festival, and the city is choosing tourism over its own citizens. Cancel it, and the city is tearing down, with its own hands, the very thing it built to save the region. Mayor Shigeru Horiuchi chose. This is what he said. His statement, as the city published it. For Fujiyoshida, Mount Fuji is not merely a tourism resource. It is our life itself. But now, behind that beautiful scenery, the quiet lives of our citizens are being threatened, and I feel a strong sense of crisis about that reality. Our first task is to protect, without fail, the living environment and the dignity of our citizens. That is why we have made the decision to retire the name of the Cherry Blossom Festival, which has continued for 10 years. This is a turning point for Fujiyoshida to be reborn as a truly sustainable city of high-quality tourism. When I first read that statement, I stopped at one word: dignity. Not convenience, not comfort, dignity. To me, that is the word a government reaches for when the thing being lost cannot be measured in yen. But look closely at what Fujiyoshida actually did. The cherry trees will still bloom in April 2026. The park stays open. What the city canceled was the event, the name, the stage, the invitation. For the 17 days of peak bloom, it will still pay for security guards, traffic control, temporary parking, and extra toilets. The viewing deck moves to timed entry. The city didn't cancel the crowd, it canceled the welcome. Hold the two answers next to each other. Two neighboring municipalities, the same mountain, the same overwhelming crowds, drawn by the same love. Fujikawaguchiko looked at its famous view and said, "We will manage this. A lower curtain, a photo you can still take." Fujiyoshida looked at its famous festival and said, "We will stop hosting this. The trees will bloom, but the party is over." Opposite answers. And honestly, I can't tell you which one is right. Part of me felt relief when I read the cancellation. Relief for the people whose mornings might finally get a little quieter. And part of me grieves for something harder to name. A city that dreamed of being loved, got its wish, and then had to take the wish back. Here's what I honestly think as one Japanese woman watching this from inside the country. The villain of this story never had a face. It wasn't foreign tourists as a group. A couple from Singapore stood at the corner and told a reporter themselves, having to step into the road for a good photo was dangerous. The people causing the problem and the people worried about the problem were sometimes the very same people. And one shop owner in Chizuoka told a local outlet that, from where he stood, the badly parked cars were more often Japanese than foreign. The thing that overwhelmed these towns doesn't have a nationality. It's the machine from the beginning. A photo becomes a pin becomes a pilgrimage, and the pilgrimage arrives at a speed no town hall can match. The photo went viral around 2022. The curtain came in 2024. The full climbing fee in 2025. The cancellation in 2026. An image can travel around the planet in a day. The institutions protecting the place in that image needed 4 years. That gap between the speed of desire and the speed of protection is where every scene of this story happened. Today, if you go to Fujikawaguchikon, you can still take the photo. Mount Fuji still floats above the Lawson. A low brown curtain sits quietly at the bottom of the frame, keeping your feet out of the road. Remember the first curtain, the black one, built to make people leave? This one was built to let people stay. Same corner, same idea, a sheet of fabric, opposite philosophy. For centuries, we worshipped this mountain from a distance. Maybe a curtain is simply the newest shape of that distance. And in April, in the neighboring city, the cherry trees of Arakurayama will bloom over a festival that no longer exists, guarded by security staff the city still pays for, photographed by visitors the city no longer invites. One question has been sitting with me this whole time. Is there a place in your country that is being loved to the edge of breaking? A beach, a street, a festival that used to belong to the people who lived there and now belongs to everyone's camera roll? And if that place had to choose between the curtain and the cancellation, between managing the love and refusing it, which answer would you want it to give? That's everything for today. I make these videos because I genuinely love Japan. Not just the beautiful parts that make it into travel guides, but the complicated, painful, real parts too. What makes Japanese people angry? What breaks their hearts? What makes them happy? What they actually value? If that's the Japan you want to understand, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.